You don't belong in this line, sweetie. Economy boarding is at the rear. Those 11 words were the last professional mistake Gregory Halloway would ever make. He looked at the black woman standing before him, dressed in an oversized grey hoodie, no makeup and worn-out running shoes, and he saw a nobody. He saw someone trying to sneak a taste of a life she couldn't afford. What Gregory didn't see was the woman who had just closed a historic $4 billion merger 3 hours earlier. He didn't see Viviane St. Clair, the CEO of Etheris Tech, and he certainly didn't expect that the shattered iPhone in her hand was the only thing stopping his entire airport terminal from shutting down. When she finally made her call, she didn't scream. She whispered, and the world froze. The air inside JFK's Terminal 4 tasted like stale coffee and high-stakes anxiety. It was 6:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, the witching hour for international departures, where the sunlight dying against the massive glass panes seemed to signal the start of the rush. Thousands of bodies moved in a chaotic river of noise, rolling suitcases clacking against the terrazzo floor like a synchronized army of plastic beetles, the endless drone of announcements dissolving into static and the sharp, piercing cries of tired children. For most people, this environment was a hellscape to be endured. For Viviane St. Clair, it was usually a blur, seen from the back of a private limousine or the quiet solitude of a tarmac transfer. But not today. Today, the private jet, a Gulfstream G650, usually at her beck and call, was grounded in Teterboro with a hydraulic failure. Her team had scrambled to find a commercial solution. They had managed to secure the last seat in The Residence, the ultra-exclusive 3-room suite aboard the massive Airbus A380, operated by Royal Meridian Airlines Flight 404 to Zurich. Viviane adjusted the hood of her charcoal sweatshirt, pulling it lower over her forehead. She wasn't trying to hide. She was simply exhausted. The last 72 hours had been a blur of boardrooms in Silicon Valley and high-pressure negotiations in New York. She had slept a total of 4 hours in 3 days. The merger between her logistics AI firm Etheris and the European shipping giant Nord Cartel was finally signed. The ink was dry. The press release would go out tomorrow morning. Until then, she was a ghost. She carried no luggage, only a battered leather backpack slung over one shoulder. It looked like something a college student might carry, scuffed at the corners and faded by the sun. In reality, it was a vintage customized piece from a bespoke Italian tannery in Florence, worth more than the Honda Civic parked outside the terminal, but to the untrained eye, it was just old. She walked with a slow, deliberate gait toward Gate A6. The boarding area for Royal Meridian was divided into strict castes. To the left, a sprawling mass of humanity waited for economy and premium economy. To the right, behind a thick velvet rope and a polished brass stanchion, was the first class and residence entry. It was a sanctuary of red carpet and silence. Standing guard at the podium of this sanctuary was Gregory Halloway. Gregory was a man who wore his uniform like armor. His navy blue blazer was buttoned tight, straining slightly against a midsection that had seen too many airport food court dinners. His hair was gelled into an immovable helmet of brown spikes, and his badge, Lead Gate Agent, caught the overhead fluorescent lights with a blinding glare. He didn't just check tickets. He curated the passenger list. He was the bouncer of Gate A6, and he took his job with a seriousness that bordered on religious fanaticism. Viviane watched him for a moment from a distance. She saw how he fawned over a tall man in a bespoke suit Preston B. Whitmore III, if the luggage tag on his Louis Vuitton carry-on was to be believed. Gregory smiled, bowing slightly, his voice dripping with sycophancy as he scanned the man's pass. "Right this way, Mr. Whitmore. Champagne is already poured at your seat. Thank you for your loyalty to Royal Meridian." Whitmore didn't even acknowledge him. He just breezed past, tapping away on his phone. Gregory's smile didn't falter. He lived for the proximity to power, even if that power ignored him. Then Viviane stepped up. She moved toward the red carpet. The contrast between her and the previous passenger was stark. She wore joggers that had seen better days, and a pair of sneakers that were comfortable but aesthetically tired. She wasn't wearing the uniform of the first-class traveler. No loud logos, no stiff blazer, no ostentatious jewelry. Her net worth was hidden in the offshore accounts and the stock portfolio that was currently skyrocketing, not on her wrist. As her sneaker touched the edge of the red carpet, Gregory's head snapped up. The sycophantic smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of cold, practiced disdain. It was a look Viviane knew well. It was the look of a gatekeeper, deciding who gets to pass and who gets to beg. He didn't speak immediately. He just stepped out from behind the podium, physically blocking the narrow lane with his body. He crossed his arms over his chest, the scanner dangling from his hand like a weapon. "Ma'am?" he said, his voice flat loud enough for the nearby economy passengers to hear. "You're lost." Viviane stopped. She looked up, her dark eyes calm but sharp. She was too tired for this. "Excuse me, I said you're lost," Gregory repeated, pointing a manicured finger toward the crowded, chaotic mass on the left. "Group 4 and 5 are boarding in 20 minutes. You need to wait over there with the rest of general boarding." Viviane took a deep breath, fighting the urge to snap. She just wanted to sit down, drink a glass of water, and sleep for 8 hours. "I'm not Group 4, she said, her voice steady, low, and distinct. She pulled her phone from her pocket, bringing up the Royal Meridian app. The screen displayed the QR code with a shimmering gold border, the digital hallmark of the residence. "I'm on the manifest, seat 1A. Gregory didn't look at the phone. He looked at her face, then down at her sneakers, then back at her face. A smirk curled the corner of his lip. "Seat 1A, he repeated, chuckling dryly. "The residence, right." "Yes," Viviane said, extending the phone toward him. "If you could just scan it. I don't need to scan it to know it's a glitch or a fake sweetheart," Gregory said, stepping closer, invading her personal space. The scent of heavy cologne and mint gum wafted off him. "We've been having a lot of issues lately with people buying fraudulent boarding passes on the dark web. Or maybe you just screenshotted someone else's ticket. Either way, I'm not letting you hold up the line for our actual premium guests." Behind Viviane, a couple in expensive ski gear grew impatient. "Come on, let's go," the man grumbled. "Some of us have places to be." Viviane didn't turn around. She held Gregory's gaze. "My name is Viviane St. Clair. I purchased this ticket 3 hours ago directly through your corporate concierge. Scan the code, Gregory." Using his name was a calculated move. It usually snapped service workers back to reality. But for Gregory, it had the opposite effect. It felt like a challenge. "Don't tell me how to do my job," he snapped, his face reddening. "And don't say my name like you know me. You want me to scan it." "Fine." He snatched the scanner from his belt and aimed it at her phone. But he didn't press the trigger. He mimed the action, holding it there for a split second before pulling it away. "Beep." "Oh, look at that," he said sarcastically. "Invalid, just like I thought." He hadn't even turned the laser on. You didn't scan it, Viviane said, her voice dropping an octave. The tiredness was fading, replaced by a cold, hard knot of anger forming in her chest. I did, Gregory lied, raising his voice so the onlookers could hear. And it was rejected. Now you can either step aside and wait for me to call security to sort out your little fraud situation, or you can walk away and we forget this happened. But you are not getting on this plane. The airport noise seemed to dim around them. The tension at Gate A6 was becoming a spectacle. People in the economy line had stopped scrolling on their phones and were now watching phones, raised cameras recording. Viviane St. Clair stood motionless. She had negotiated with hostile foreign governments. She had fired boards of directors. She had stared down antitrust committees. And she was not about to be bullied by a man named Gregory in a polyester blazer. Scan it again, she said. Properly. The air around Gate A6 seemed to thicken, charged with the static of a brewing storm. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder, a chorus of hushed judgments and impatient sighs. Just move, someone shouted from the back of the priority line. You're holding up the flight. Gregory Halloway basked in this. He felt the support of the crowd. In his mind, he was the hero, the defender of the gate, protecting the sanctity of first class from an intruder. He looked at the woman before him, this defiant, disheveled woman who dared to give him orders, and he decided he was going to break her. I am not scanning it again, Gregory said, pronouncing every syllable with exaggerated slowness, as if speaking to a child. I have already determined that your ticket is invalid. You are disrupting the boarding process. This is a federal offense, ma'am, interfering with flight crew duties. Viviane didn't blink. You are a gate agent, Gregory. You are ground staff. You are not flight crew. And checking a valid ticket is your duty. If you refuse to do it, I will need to speak to your station manager. Gregory laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. The station manager. You think you can just demand the manager? This isn't a Burger King, lady. This is Royal Meridian, and I am the manager on duty for this flight. He turned his back on her, a dismissal so absolute it was like a physical slap. He looked past her to the couple in the ski gear. My apologies, Mr. and Mrs. van der Hoeven. Gregory beamed, his voice transforming instantly into honey. Please step forward. Ignore the disturbance. The man, tall and blonde, with a jawline that suggested old money, pushed his luggage cart forward, roughly bumping into Viviane's leg. Excuse you, the man muttered, not looking at her. Move aside. Viviane stumbled slightly, but caught herself. The physical contact crossed a line. The sheer indignity of it being shoved aside like trash while holding a ticket that cost $32,000 sent a shock wave through her nervous system. She didn't move. She planted her feet. I'm not moving, Viviane said, her voice projecting clearly now. She turned to face the van der Hovens and then back to Gregory. I was here first. I have a valid ticket. You will process me or no one boards. Gregory spun around, his face flushing a deep, blotchy crimson. He slammed his hand down on the podium. Security, he yelled, waving his arm toward the pair of TSA officers standing near the food court. We have a disruptive passenger level 2 threat at Gate A6. The crowd gasped. Phones were held higher. The red recording lights were blinking like hundreds of tiny eyes. Viviane watched the security officers start to jog over. She knew how this looked. An angry black woman in a hoodie, raising her voice, refusing to move. She knew the narrative Gregory was spinning. She knew the danger she was in. If she resisted, if she raised her voice 1 decibel too high, she would be tackled, handcuffed, and dragged away. The headline would be "Unruly Passenger Arrested at JFK." Her stock price would dip. The merger could be jeopardized. She had to be smarter. She had to be ice. She took a step back, raising her hands slowly to show she was not a threat. The security officers slowed their approach, but kept their hands near their belts. "I am stepping out of the line," Viviane announced calmly, ensuring the cameras picked up her compliance. "I am waiting right here." Gregory sneered, feeling the rush of victory. "That's right, step back. In fact, keep stepping back until you're out of the terminal." He turned to the Van der Hovens again. "Go right ahead, folks." As the couple scanned their boarding passes and walked down the jet bridge, Gregory looked at Viviane one last time. He wanted to twist the knife. "You know," he said, leaning over the podium, his voice a conspiratorial whisper that only she and the nearest passengers could hear. "Even if that ticket was real, look at you. You degrade the brand. We sell an image, sweetie. And you look like the help." The insult hung in the air, gross and heavy. Viviane felt a cold calm wash over her. It was the same sensation she felt before she destroyed a competitor in a hostile takeover. The emotion evaporated, replaced by pure, calculating logic. She looked at Gregory. She really looked at him. She memorized his face. She memorized his badge number RMA-NY-4922. She memorized the time 6:28 p.m. "You're right, Gregory," she said softly. "I do look like the help. I help companies fix their biggest mistakes." She reached into her pocket. Not for a weapon, but for her phone. Gregory rolled his eyes. "Who are you calling your boyfriend to come beat me up? Go ahead. Call him." "No," Viviane said, unlocking her screen. Her thumb hovered over her contacts. She didn't scroll. She typed a single name into the search bar. Harry. Harrison Harry Caldwell. The chairman of the board for the global transport group that owned Royal Meridian. They had attended Wharton together 20 years ago. They had lunch once a month. He was currently on his yacht in the Mediterranean, probably enjoying a cigar. She pressed the call icon. Gregory turned back to the line of passengers. "Next, please, priority boarding only." Viviane held the phone to her ear. It rang once. Twice. "Viv." Harry's voice crackled through the earpiece, sounding surprised. "I thought you were in a blackout period for the Nord cartel deal. Everything okay?" "Harry," Viviane said, her voice smooth, devoid of the shaking rage she felt inside. "I'm at JFK Gate, A6. Your lead agent, a Mr. Gregory Halloway, just denied me boarding to my seat in the residence. He accused me of fraud, called security on me, and told me I look like the help." There was a silence on the other end of the line. A silence so profound, it felt like the ocean itself had stopped moving. "He said what?" Harry's voice was no longer casual. It was the voice of a man who killed businesses for sport. "He refused to scan my ticket," Viviane continued, staring at the back of Gregory's head. "He's currently letting other passengers board, while I stand here with the TSA hovering. I need you to do something for me, Harry." "Name it," Harry said. "You want me to fire him?" "Consider it done." "No," Viviane said. "Firing him is too easy. I want you to freeze the gate. Freeze it. I want you to override the gate control system," Viviane said. "I want you to lock the jet bridge doors. I want you to ground this plane. Nobody gets on, nobody gets off, until you and I say so." Harry paused for a second, then a low chuckle came through the line. "You always did have a flair for the dramatic, Viv. Give me 30 seconds. Keep the line open." Viviane lowered the phone, but didn't hang up. She stood there, watching Gregory scan the next passenger's ticket. "Have a wonderful flight," Gregory chirped. He aimed the scanner at the next ticket. He pulled the trigger. Bzzz 2. A harsh red light flashed on the scanner. "System error." Gregory frowned. He tapped the device. "1 second, folks. Little technical hiccup." He tried again. Bzzz. He looked at the computer terminal on his podium. The screen flickered. Suddenly, the Royal Meridian logo disappeared, replaced by a flashing red box. Terminal override lockdown initiated. Authorization. Chairman level. The pneumatic doors to the jet bridge hissed and slammed shut, locking automatically with a loud thud. The passengers on the bridge banged on the glass. The passengers in the terminal gasped. Gregory frantically tapped the keyboard. "What the?" He looked up, panic flaring in his eyes. He looked around for a supervisor. Then his eyes locked on Viviane. She was still standing there, the phone by her side, a terrifyingly serene expression on her face. She raised the phone to her ear again. "It's done," she said to Gregory, though she was speaking to Harry. Gregory's face went pale. The silence in the terminal was deafening. The freeze had begun. The silence that fell over Gate A6 was unnatural. In an airport, silence is usually a momentary gap between announcements, a brief pause in the relentless industrial hum. But this was different. This was the silence of a machine that had been violently unplugged. The pneumatic doors to the jet bridge remained sealed shut. A sleek barrier of reinforced glass and steel that separated the chosen few from their destination. Behind the glass, the Van der Hovens and a dozen other priority passengers were visible, their faces pressed against the pane mouths, moving in silent confusion. They looked like fish in an expensive aquarium, suddenly realizing the water was draining away. Gregory Halloway stared at his screen. The flashing red box. Terminal override lockdown initiated, pulsed with a hypnotic rhythm. He mashed the escape key. He hit Control-Alt-Delete. He slapped the side of the monitor. Nothing. "What did you do?" he whispered, his voice trembling. He wasn't speaking to the computer. He spun around to face Viviane. "What did you do to my system?" Viviane didn't answer him. She was looking at the ceiling, observing the security cameras. She knew that somewhere in a control room, people were scrambling. She knew that Harry wasn't just freezing a gate. He was making a point. "I asked you a question." Gregory shouted, his facade of professional elitism cracking wide open. He pointed a shaking finger at her. You hacked it. You're using some kind of jammer, TSA officer. She's jamming the airport signals." The two TSA officers, who had been watching the scene with bored indifference, suddenly perked up. Technology threats were serious. One of them, a heavyset man named Officer Miller, stepped forward, his hand resting on his radio. "Ma'am," Miller said, his voice authoritative, "put the phone away. Step away from the podium." "My phone is on a voice call," Viviane said calmly, holding the device up so they could see the screen. It was black, save for the call timer ticking upward, 0214. "I am speaking to the owner of this airline. I suggest you don't interrupt us." Officer Miller blinked. "The owner? She's lying," Gregory shrieked. "She's a fraud. She tried to use a fake ticket, and now she's crashed my computer." Suddenly, the intercom system above them crackled. Usually, it was a smooth, pre-recorded female voice announcing boarding zones. Now, it issued a harsh electronic screech that made everyone cover their ears. Then a dead silence followed. The departure board behind the desk, the massive LCD screen displaying Zurich. Flight 404 flickered. The flight information vanished. In its place, a single line of text appeared in stark white against a black background, gate closed. Awaiting executive clearance. A murmur of panic rippled through the hundreds of economy passengers waiting in the terminal. What does that mean? A woman with a baby strapped to her chest asked loudly. Is the flight cancelled? Hey, we've been waiting 2 hours. A man in a business suit yelled. What is going on? Gregory looked at the board, then back at his useless computer. Sweat began to bead on his forehead, disrupting the perfect line of his gelled hair. He grabbed the landline phone on the desk, the direct line to operations. He held it to his ear. Dead air. No dial tone. Just a hollow, mocking silence. This isn't possible, Gregory muttered. This is a hard line. It can't be hacked. It's not hacked, Gregory, Viviane said. Her voice cut through the rising noise of the crowd like a razor. It's administratively disabled. There is a difference. The door from the jet bridge, the one leading back from the plane, burst open. It wasn't the passengers. It was the captain. Captain Jonathan Sterling was a man of the old school, silver hair, 4 gold stripes on his shoulders, and a demeanor of absolute command. He stormed out of the bridge, looking furious. Halloway, Sterling barked. Why have the bridge doors locked? We have passengers trapped in the tunnel. The heat is rising in there. And ground control just told us our flight plan has been suspended. They revoked our slot. What in God's name are you doing up here? Gregory looked at the captain, his eyes wide and desperate. Captain. I don't know. The system just crashed. It's this woman. He pointed an accusatory finger at Viviane. She's doing something with her phone. She's a cyber-terrorist or something. Captain Sterling turned his gaze to Viviane. He frowned. He saw a tired woman in a hoodie holding an iPhone. He didn't see a terrorist. He saw someone who looked vaguely familiar, though he couldn't place her. Ma'am, Sterling said, stepping closer, I need you to lower that device. If you are interfering with airport equipment, that is a federal crime. Captain Sterling, Viviane said. She knew his name from the flight roster she had briefly glanced at on her app before Gregory had tried to humiliate her. I apologize for the delay to your flight, but your ground operations lead here. She gestured to Gregory. Refused to board a valid passenger because he didn't like the way she looked. I am simply escalating the complaint. Escalating? Sterling scoffed. You shut down the gate. Who do you think you are? Viviane smiled. It was a small, sad smile. Ask your flight computer, Captain. Oh, wait, you can't. Your flight plan is suspended. Why don't you ask Control who suspended it? Sterling glared at her, then grabbed his radio. Dispatch, this is Royal Meridian 404. We have a situation at the gate, requesting reason for slot revocation. There was a pause. The static hissed. Then a voice came back from dispatch, sounding shaken. Meridian 404, be advised. The stop order came from Global HQ. It came from the chairman's office directly. We are told to stand by for VIP intervention. Sterling lowered the radio slowly. He looked at Viviane with new eyes. The arrogance drained out of his stance, replaced by a wary confusion. The chairman, Sterling whispered. Gregory heard it too. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like he might faint. The chairman. Harry is waiting for an update, Viviane said, lifting the phone back to her ear. Hello, Harry. Yes, the captain is here. And the gate agent. Gregory is starting to understand the gravity of the situation. Good. Harry's voice boomed loud enough that Vivian didn't even need speakerphone for the captain to hear the tone of authority. "I'm looking at the live feed from the terminal security cameras, Viv. Is that him? The one sweating through his polyester suit?" Vivian looked at Gregory. He was indeed sweating. Massive dark patches were forming under the arms of his blazer. "That's him," Vivian said. "Tell him to look at the main departure screen," Harry said. "The big one in the main hall. I want everyone to see it." Vivian pointed a finger toward the massive central atrium of Terminal 4, visible through the glass walls of the holding area. "Gregory, look!" Gregory turned. The captain turned. The crowd turned. The giant digital board, usually a kaleidoscope of flight times and destinations, went black. Then it refreshed. Every single flight listed London-Dubai. Paris-Tokyo remained. But next to Royal Meridian Flight 404 to Zurich. The status didn't say delayed or cancelled. It flashed in bright red letters. Status Personnel Review. A hush swept through the terminal. Passengers from other gates were stopping to look. It was unprecedented. Airlines didn't air their dirty laundry on the departure board. "Personnel review," Gregory squeaked. "That's me." "That's you," Vivian confirmed. "You can't do this." Gregory stammered, his world collapsing. "I followed protocol. I suspected fraud. I have discretion." "Discretion implies judgment," Vivian said, stepping closer to the velvet rope. "You didn't use judgment. You used bias. You looked at my shoes, my skin, and my hoodie, and you decided I wasn't worth the seat I paid for. You decided to play king of the castle." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper that felt like a knife against his throat. "But you forgot, Gregory. Kings answer to emperors. And you're just the guy who opens the door." The tension at the gate had shifted from annoyance to spectacle. It was no longer just a delayed flight. It was a scene. Passengers in the back rows were standing on chairs to get a better view. Phones were live streaming. The hashtag #JFKGate drama was already trending locally on Twitter X. From the far end of the concourse, a flurry of movement broke the stalemate. A group of people in suits was actually running toward Gate A6. Leading the pack was a woman with short blonde hair and a terrifyingly sharp pantsuit. She was clutching a tablet to her chest as if it contained the nuclear codes. This was Karen Millicent, the regional station manager for Royal Meridian. Behind her trailed two other managers and a nervous-looking man from Port Authority. Gregory saw her coming and felt a surge of relief. Karen was his boss. Karen was strict. Karen followed the rules. She would put a stop to this madness. She would have this woman arrested. "Karen," Gregory shouted, waving his arms. "Over here! You have to help me. This woman, she's crazy. She's hacked the system." Karen Millicent didn't even look at him. She didn't slow down until she reached the red carpet. She skidded to a halt, breathless, her chest heaving. She ignored Gregory entirely. She ignored the captain. She walked straight up to Vivian St. Clair. To Gregory's horror, Karen didn't yell. She didn't call security. She bowed. It wasn't a curtsy, but a deep, respectful inclination of her head, a gesture of submission that sent a shock-wave through the onlookers. "Ms. St. Clair," Karen gasped, trying to regain her composure. "I am so incredibly sorry. I was in a meeting in Terminal 1 when the call came in from London. We had no idea you were flying with us today. If we had known, we would have had the VIP protocol in place." Vivian looked at the woman. "It shouldn't require a VIP protocol to get on a plane, Karen. A boarding pass should be enough." "Of course." Karen said, her face pale. "You are absolutely right. This is an unacceptable failure of service." Gregory stood there, his mouth agape. "Karen, what are you doing? She's nobody. She's wearing a hoodie. She has a fake ticket." Karen spun on him, her eyes blazing with a fury that could melt steel. "Shut up, Gregory." "But," I said. "Shut up," Karen snapped. "Do you have any idea who you are talking to?" She gestured to Viviane with a shaking hand. "This is Viviane St. Clair, founder and CEO of Aetherist Technologies. She was on the cover of Forbes last month. She just brokered the Nord cartel merger, which, by the way, makes her company the primary logistics partner for our entire airline cargo division." The silence that followed was absolute. Gregory looked at Viviane. He looked at the hoodie. He looked at the sneakers, and suddenly the pieces clicked into place. The confidence, the lack of luggage, the vintage bag, the phone call. He felt the blood drain from his extremities. He felt dizzy. He wasn't just refusing a passenger. He was refusing the woman who effectively controlled the supply chain for the food, the parts, and the fuel that kept Royal Meridian in the air. "I didn't know," Gregory whispered. "You didn't look," Viviane said. "And it gets worse, Gregory," Karen said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Because you decided to play games Ms. St. Clair called Harry Caldwell. Do you know what Mr. Caldwell told me on the phone 2 minutes ago?" Gregory shook his head, unable to speak. "He told me that Aetheris is currently reviewing their corporate travel contracts," Karen said. "A contract worth $40 million a year to this airline. And because of you, because of the way you treated their CEO at this gate, Mr. Caldwell is terrified she's going to pull the contract." The crowd gasped. $40 million. Viviane watched Gregory. She saw the realization hit him like a physical blow. He staggered back against the podium. "I was just following protocol." Gregory tried one last time, his voice a pathetic whimper. "No," Viviane said. She stepped forward, crossing the velvet rope that he had used to bar her path. She stood inches from him. She wasn't shouting. She was speaking with the quiet, devastating clarity of a judge passing a sentence. "Protocol is checking a ticket," she said. "Protocol is treating every passenger with basic human dignity. What you did was profiling. You saw a black woman in a hoodie, and you decided she didn't belong in your world. You decided to humiliate me to make yourself feel big." She gestured to the crowd, to the hundreds of people watching. "Well, Gregory, do you feel big now?" Gregory looked around. He saw the phones. He saw the faces of the passengers, disgust, amusement, anger. He saw the captain shaking his head. He saw his boss, Karen, looking at him like he was a cancer she needed to cut out. "I'm sorry," Gregory choked out. "Ms. St. Clair, please. I have a mortgage. I have 2 kids in private school. Please don't let them fire me." It was the ultimate plea. The appeal to humanity. Viviane looked at him. For a second, her eyes softened. She was a mother. She understood the weight of responsibility. But then she remembered the smirk. She remembered the way he had catered to the Van der Hovens. She remembered him calling her the help. She remembered the countless other people who didn't have her power, who had stood at this gate and been belittled, dismissed, and shamed by this man, and who had no recourse. She wasn't just doing this for herself. She was doing it for every person who had ever been made to feel small by a man in a polyester blazer. "I'm not going to have you fired, Gregory," Viviane said. Gregory let out a sob of relief. "Thank you. Oh, thank you. I swear I'm not going to have you fired," she repeated, cutting him off. Because that's too easy. You'd just go to another airline. You'd wear another uniform. You'd treat someone else the same way. She turned to Karen. Karen, is the flight still grounded? Yes, Ms. St. Clair, until you say otherwise. Good, Viviane said. Here are my terms for unfreezing this gate. I want to board. I want to take my seat in the residence, and I want this flight to depart. Done, Karen said immediately. And regarding Mr. Halloway? He stays, Viviane said. Gregory blinked. I stay. You stay, Viviane said, a cold smile touching her lips. But not at the gate, and not in the first class. She looked at the crowded economy section. She looked at the toilets at the back of the plane that hadn't been serviced properly in 3 rotations. There is a seat open in 48E, isn't there, Karen? Right next to the lavatory. Karen checked her tablet. She understood immediately. Yes, middle seat, last row. Perfect, Viviane said. Gregory is going to fly with us to Zurich, but he's not working. He's going to be a passenger. He's going to sit in 48E. He's going to wear his uniform so everyone knows who he is. And he's going to spend the next 8 hours experiencing exactly what it feels like to be the nobody he despises so much. And if he refuses? Karen asked. Viviane shrugged. Then I pull the Aetheris contract. $40 million. You can explain to the board why you lost it. Karen turned to Gregory. Her face was stone. You heard her, Gregory. Get on the plane. Row 48. Or you're not just fired, you're sued for negligence and blacklisted from the industry. Gregory looked at the jet bridge. He looked at the crowd. He looked at Viviane. He had no choice. Slowly, painfully, Gregory Halloway, the King of Gate. A 6 unclipped his badge. He lowered his head, and he began the long, shameful walk down the jet bridge, not as a leader, but as the lowest of the low. Viviane watched him go. Shall we board? She asked Karen. Karen gestured to the open door. After you, Ms. St. Clair. The Airbus. A380 is a marvel of modern engineering, a double-decker behemoth capable of transporting 500 souls in relative comfort. But physics is indifferent to human misery. And for Gregory Halloway flight, 404 was about to become a prison cell at 35,000 feet. He walked onto the plane, not with the strut of a lead gate agent, but with the shuffle of a condemned man. The flight attendants at the door, usually his colleagues and friends, looked at him with a mixture of confusion and pity. They had heard the rumors news travels faster than light in an airport terminal, but seeing him was different. He was still wearing his navy blazer, but the badge was gone. The authority was stripped away. He looked smaller, deflated like a balloon left out in the cold. Greg, one of the senior attendants, a woman named Sheila, whispered as he passed the galley. What's going on? The captain said, Don't, Gregory croaked, not making eye contact. Just don't. He had to walk through the entire plane. This was the first part of his punishment. Usually he never went past the curtain of business class. He lived in the world of champagne flutes and lie-flat seats. Now he had to traverse the length of the aircraft. He walked past first class. He saw the closed sliding doors of the residence suite 1A. He knew Viviane St. Clair was in there. He imagined her settling into the Italian leather armchair, perhaps sipping the vintage Krug he had promised to Mr. Whitmore, wrapping herself in a cashmere blanket. The thought made bile rise in his throat. He passed through business class. The passengers here were settling in, adjusting their noise-cancelling headphones. A few recognized him from the gate. "Hey, isn't that the guy who was yelling?" a man in 12C whispered to his wife. "Yeah, the one who caused the delay. Why is he walking back there?" Gregory kept his head down, staring at the blue carpet pattern, counting the rows. 20, 30, 40. The air changed as he crossed the bulkhead into economy. It was warmer here, stuffier. The smell of humanity was stronger, a mix of fast food baby wipes and tired bodies. The overhead bins were already full, and passengers were wrestling with bags blocking the aisle. "Excuse me," Gregory mumbled, trying to squeeze past a backpacker who was blocking the way with a guitar case. "Watch it, buddy," the backpacker snapped. Finally, he reached the back, the absolute back, row 48. It was the worst row on the plane. Located directly in front of the rear galley and right next to the lavatories, the seats in row 48 didn't recline. The wall behind them was rigid. The constant flushing of the vacuum toilets was a rhythmic, deafening whoosh that vibrated through the floor. Seat 48E was the middle seat. To his left, in 48D, sat a large man who had clearly already started drinking at the airport bar. He was sprawled out, his elbows claiming both armrests. To his right, in 48F, was a young mother with a toddler on her lap and an infant in a bassinet attached to the bulkhead wall. The infant was screaming. The toddler was kicking the seat in front of him. Gregory stood in the aisle, staring at the narrow sliver of fabric that was to be his home for the next 8 hours. "You sitting or what?" the man in 48D grunted. "You're blocking the cart." Gregory squeezed into the seat. He was a broad man, and the seat pitch was unforgiving. His knees pressed firmly into the hard plastic back of seat 47E. He tried to claim a sliver of the armrest, but the man on his left nudged him off with a meaty forearm. "My space, pal," the man grunted. Gregory closed his eyes. This is a nightmare, he thought. I'll wake up in my bed in Queens. This isn't real. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Sterling's voice boomed over the PA, sounding crisp and professional. "Welcome aboard Flight 404 to Zurich. We apologize for the delay at the gate. We are now number 1 for departure. Our flight time will be 7 hours and 45 minutes. 7 hours, 45 minutes. As the plane taxied, Gregory felt a vibration in his pocket. He had forgotten to turn off his phone. He pulled it out, shielding the screen. It was blowing up. His phone was usually quiet, maybe a text from his wife or a fantasy football update. Now notifications were cascading down the screen like a waterfall. Twitter. Is this the guy #JFK Gate Drama at Royal Meridian agent denies CEO boarding? Instagram tagged in a photo by @travelblogger_99. This clown just got owned at JFK. Karma is real. TikTok video sent to you POV. You mess with the wrong billionaire. 2. 1 million views. He clicked on the TikTok link. His hands shook. It was a video taken by someone in the line. It showed him sneering, pointing his finger, saying, "You look like the help." The audio was crystal clear. The caption read, "Racist gate agent gets served." The comments were a bloodbath. "Fire him into the sun. I know this guy. He was rude to my grandma last Christmas. Royal Meridian needs to answer for this." Gregory felt a cold sweat break out all over his body. It wasn't just a delay. It wasn't just a reprimand. He was viral. He was the main character of the internet for the day, and he was the villain. The plane roared down the runway, the G-force pressing him back into the unyielding seat. As they lifted off, the baby next to him's ears popped, and the screaming intensified to a siren pitch. The whoosh of the toilet flushed for the first time. It was going to be a very long night. 2 hours into the flight, the cabin lights were dimmed. Most passengers were asleep or watching movies. In the residence, Viviane St. Clair was wide awake. She had showered in the onboard spa, a luxury she rarely indulged in, and changed into the silk pajamas provided by the airline. She sat at her private desk, reviewing the final clauses of the Nord cartel agreement on her laptop. A glass of sparkling water sat untouched beside her. She wasn't gloating. She didn't feel a sense of triumphant joy. She felt a heavy, weary resolve. What she had done at the gate was necessary, but it was draining. Being strong was always draining. There was a soft knock at her suite door. It was Sheila, the flight attendant. "Ms. St. Clair," Sheila whispered. "I hope you're comfortable." "I am, thank you, Sheila." "Captain Sterling wanted me to pass on his personal apologies again," Sheila said, setting down a small plate of warm chocolates. "And, well, I wanted to ask, do you need anything regarding our guest in 48E?" Viviane looked up. "How is he?" Sheila hesitated. A small, guilty smile played on her lips. "He's having a difficult time. The passenger in 48D has spilled a Bloody Mary on him. Accidentally, of course, and the child in 48F has been active." Viviane nodded slowly. She took a sip of water. "Sheila, I want you to do something for me." "Anything, ma'am?" "Go back there," Viviane said. "Take him a bottle of water, and take him this." She reached into her bag and pulled out a simple white business card. It had no logo, just her name, and a phone number embossed in black ink. She wrote a short note on the back of it with a fountain pen. "Give this to him," she said. Sheila looked at the card, confused, but took it. "You want me to give him your card?" "Yes. Tell him to read the back." Sheila nodded and retreated. Back in row 48, Gregory was in a state of purgatory. His blazer was stained with tomato juice. His neck was cramping from the upright sleeping position he was forced to maintain. The smell of the lavatory had grown pungent, a chemical tang that stuck to the back of his throat. He had spent the last 2 hours staring at the seatback screen, which was broken and frozen on a map of the Atlantic Ocean. He had tried to close his eyes, but every time he drifted off, the toilet flushed or the neighbor elbowed him. He was replaying the moment at the gate, over and over. Why didn't I just scan the ticket? Why did I have to say that comment? He thought about his wife, Linda. She worked as a nurse. She worked hard. They were saving for a trip to Disney World for their kids next summer. When she saw the video, when she saw him acting like that, the shame burned hotter than the anger. He saw Sheila walking down the aisle with a flashlight. She stopped at his row. "Mr. Halloway," she whispered formally. Gregory looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Sheila, please, can I stand in the galley for a bit? My legs are killing me." "I'm afraid the seatbelt sign is on, due to turbulence, sir," Sheila said, her voice cool. "You must remain seated." She handed him a plastic bottle of water. "Compliments of seat 1A. Gregory took the bottle. It felt like a stone in his hand. "And she asked me to give you this." Sheila handed him the business card. Gregory took it. He held it up to the reading light. Viviane St. Clair, the name that had destroyed his life in under an hour. He turned it over. In elegant, sharp cursive, she had written, "The view is different from the back, isn't it? Remember this feeling. It's what you gave people every day. When we land, you have a choice. You can walk away angry or you can walk away changed. Choose wisely. Gregory stared at the words. Walk away angry. That was his instinct. To blame her. To blame the system. To blame woke culture or whatever buzzword he could grab onto to shield his ego. Walk away changed. He looked at the woman next to him, the young mother. She was exhausted. Her head was lolling forward, her mouth slightly open. She was holding the baby's hand even in her sleep. She looked human. He looked at the man who had spilled the drink. He was snoring now. His hands were calloused, his fingernails dirty. A working man. Maybe tired from a long shift. Gregory realized with a sudden jarring clarity that he had spent 10 years looking at these people as cattle, as obstacles, as Group 4. He had never looked at them as people. He had saved his humanity for the Whitmores of the world, for the people who didn't even see him. And the woman in 1A, she wasn't torturing him. She was teaching him. She had put him here not just to punish him, but to show him the world he had been sneering at. Tears pricked his eyes. Not tears of self-pity this time, but tears of genuine shame. He slumped back against the hard seat. The toilet flushed again. Whoosh! He didn't sleep for the rest of the flight. He sat there wide awake, thinking about every person he had been rude to, every power trip he had taken, every time he had made someone feel small. By the time the wheels touched the tarmac in Zurich, 7 hours later, Gregory Halloway was a wreck. He was disheveled, smelly, and exhausted. But as the plane taxied to the gate, he did something he hadn't done in years. The mother next to him woke up struggling to gather her bags and the baby. A diaper bag fell to the floor, spilling contents everywhere. Old Gregory would have sighed and looked away. New Gregory, the Gregory of seat 48. He unbuckled his seatbelt. Here, he said, his voice raspy. Let me help you with that. He got down on his hands and knees on the dirty cabin floor. He picked up the pacifiers, the wipes, the toys. He packed them back into the bag. He reached up and got her carry-on from the bin. Thank you, the woman said, looking at him with surprise. Thank you so much. It's no problem, Gregory said, and he meant it. The plane stopped. The chime sounded. The curtain between economy and business remained closed to let the premium passengers off first. Gregory waited. He knew what was coming. He had to walk off the plane. He had to walk past Viviane St. Clair one last time. The line started moving. He shuffled forward with the mass of economy passengers. He crossed the bulkhead. He walked through business class. He reached the front door. Viviane was standing there by the cockpit door, talking to Captain Sterling. She looked pristine, refreshed, untouched by the journey. She saw him coming. Gregory stopped. He was holding his stained blazer. He looked like a mess. Captain Sterling stiffened, ready to intervene if Gregory tried anything. Gregory took a deep breath. He looked at Viviane. He didn't look down. He looked her in the eye. Ms. St. Clair, he said. Viviane waited. Her expression was unreadable. I read your note, Gregory said. You were right. The view is different. He paused, swallowing the lump in his throat. I'm sorry, he said. Not because I got caught, but because I was wrong. I was a small man trying to feel big, and I'm sorry I made you feel unwelcome. He didn't wait for forgiveness. He didn't ask for his job back. He simply nodded to the captain and walked out the door. Viviane watched him go. Well, Captain Sterling said, adjusting his cap. "I didn't expect that. I thought he'd come out swinging." "People can surprise you, Captain," Viviane said quietly. "Sometimes they just need to be reminded of who they are." She picked up her vintage backpack. "Thank you for the flight, Captain." She walked onto the jet bridge, the cool Swiss air hitting her face. She had a merger to announce. She had a press conference in 2 hours. She had a billion-dollar company to run. But as she walked through the Zurich terminal, checking her phone, she saw a new notification. It was an email from Harry Caldwell. Subject: Gate, Agent Halloway. "Viv just got the report. I'm ready to sign the termination papers. Let me know if you want to press charges for the disruption." Viviane stopped walking. She typed a reply. "Harry. Don't fire him. Suspend him for a month without pay. Retrain him. Put him on probation. But keep him. He learned the lesson. And honestly, I think he might be the best agent you have when he comes back. He knows what it's like on the other side now. See you in London next week. V." She hit send. She walked out into the arrivals hall, where a driver was waiting with a sign that said, "St. Clair." She didn't look back. The lesson was delivered. The karma had been served, and the balance for now was restored. In the end, Viviane St. Clair didn't just win a fight. She dismantled a mindset. Gregory Halloway learned the hard way that power isn't about the uniform you wear or the side of the velvet rope you stand on. It's about how you treat the people trying to cross it. He spent 7 hours in the worst seat on the plane, not as punishment, but as an awakening. When Viviane walked out of that airport, she proved that true strength doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to brag. Sometimes it just needs to make one phone call. What would you have done if you were Viviane? Would you have fired him? Or would you have given him a second chance? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. Share this video with a friend and subscribe for more real-life stories. See you next time.